Well, hello, everyone. Wasn't sure who'd show up on the Sunday after Thanksgiving, but y'all are here. Got my mail. Okay. Well, I hope you all have had a pleasant holiday weekend in whatever way you have. We capped ours off last night by going to see the film version of Wicked. And if you have not seen it yet, it is, Nancy, forgive me for saying this, it is better than the stage musical. It is absolutely, in my opinion, highly valued opinion, it is the best movie adaptation of a stage play in history. It's that good. It is amazing. So if you have any interest, go see it. Now, it's nearly 3 hours long.
Yeah, it's long.
So buy some popcorn.
We went for lunch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and if you go to Alamo Draft House, go early because they have in their previews, they show you like the history of the Wizard of Oz in film and commercials and stuff. It's worth being there 30 minutes early to see all that stuff. So just my advice. So thank you for asking how I'm doing. I'll tell you anyway. It's just a matter of who's after me right now because of my work. And I've got some conservative Methodists who are after me. Those of you who are familiar with the Methodist world, it's the Good News folks. They're upset with something we published. I've got some progressive Baptists in Charlotte, North Carolina upset with me because I reported that they fired their pastor on the Sunday before Thanksgiving in an emergency Zoom meeting when there was no emergency. The fourth pastor they've run off in recent history. Yeah. And Jim, the amazing thing is the church has had declining attendance and declining giving, and it's all the pastor's fault. If he would preach more appealing sermons, we love his sermons, but if he would appeal to a broader base, we'd have more people here. Have you ever heard that one before?
In these days, these more recent years, yes.
Oh, yeah, no, it's endemic. They're not suffering from anything that every church in America is not suffering from. And then I've been researching this crazy group out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's called City Elders. And this is a group of crazy people who are part of the New Apostolic Reformation. And they are trying to take over city governments, school boards, state governments, and they've got a good start in Oklahoma, by the way, as the God-appointed elders. Yes.
I've got one for you to take on, and I don't know if this is true, but I saw it on Facebook.
Okay, well, so it might be true.
Yeah. So anyway, that guy in Oklahoma,
Ryan Walters.
the state school
Yeah.
superintendent or whatever,
Yeah.
he now has declared that teachers have to show a film of him in their class.
Oh, yeah, I've already written about that. Yes. Yeah, it's a film of him praying for Trump.
I think that's illegal.
Yeah, so that he's off the rails. Yeah.
Let's face it, Trump needs praying for.
Well, we're all standing in the need of prayer, Carol Ann.
He needs extra prayer.
Yeah.
I've been talked about before because I thought I'd seen it, but I hadn't, or I had too much wine when I saw it. Anyway, I confess. Before you all.
Yeah.
But Bad Faith, it's on.
I've not seen it yet. I know a lot of people have. Yeah.
It shows that weaving of the whole Wyrick thing and
Yeah. Right.
the conservatives and
People who've seen it love it.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
quite good.
And speaking of films, I think this is probably in Tapestry today. Rising Hope film that's about Together for Hope, the Rural Poverty Initiative that Jason Coker leads. That film is that this Friday?
The second one.
It's Monday.
Oh, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's tomorrow at the Angelica. Yeah.
In town?
The one at Mockingbird Station. Yeah. I don't remember what time, but it should be in the tapestry.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. If you're interested, yeah, if you read, I don't read anymore, so I just, I show up.
Admission is donation based with suggested donation of $10.
Okay, there you go. One, this would normally come at the prayer request time, but I'm going to say this while everyone's here. Tom and Lois are here, and one of our mutual dear friends died this week, and that's Joy Finner. You did not know. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I actually saw Joy last week, and Joy, longtime member at Gaston. She was the head of Texas Women's Missionary Union for years, was the first female president of the BGCT. She and her husband, late husband Charlie, were missionaries to Japan. And while there, they met Mark Lachey. And Mark and his family are longtime members at Wilshire. And Mark sort of became like an adopted son to them because they didn't have any children. And so Mark is the executor of her estate. Well, actually, he was co-executor of her estate, but the other co-executor died the week before. So this is a problem. But Joy was just a really, really important person in Texas Baptist life and was one of the lifebloods at Gaston for decades through all this, and just one of the all-time greats. Such a gentle spirit and yet so effective and she was the founding chairman of our board at Gaston Christian Center and served in that role for many years until she was just not physically able to anymore. So for those of you who might have known Joy, just wanted you to know that, and good ties to Wilshire as well.
Could you give me the last name?
Fenner, Finner. Yeah. Her husband, Charlie, had died, a decade ago, maybe? 8 or 10 years ago? Yeah. So, all right. Which reminds me to say to all of y'all, regardless of your age, please make sure you have your affairs in order, because you never know. You need to have a will. You need to have a medical power of attorney. You need to have some instructions left behind on something so that people don't have to make it up. Some of you have been there and you know what I'm talking about. And I say that as someone who just got up in the attic to get Christmas decorations out and thought, oh my God, if my kids have to clean out this attic, they're going to kill me again. Yeah.
Kids are full.
Right. Yeah, I know. So today in our Advent series, today's actually the first Sunday of Advent, but remember we got a jump start last week with the first lesson. Last week we talked about peace on earth. The series title is All I Want for Christmas Is. Last week we talked about peace on earth. Today I want to talk about joy to the world. Now, here's a funny thing about this notion. Joy to the world is not a phrase that appears anywhere in the Bible, unlike peace on earth. Peace on earth, goodwill toward all people, the angels say that, right? Now, that's not to say joy doesn't appear in the Bible, but it's not just a straight pickup as well. Now, my hunch is when you think this phrase, joy to the world, you immediately think of the song. Joy to the world has become the single most sung Christmas carol in history. And I want to tell you a bit about where it came from, because that will be a launching pad into this broader discussion. It's an English Christmas carol that the words were written in 1719 by none other than Isaac Watts, one of our great hymn writers, ministers of that era. But it was not set to music as we know it today for 150 years, 140 years. And there was a composer named Lowell Mason. And if you look in the hymnal at the composer, you'll see his name there. And he hitched that text of Isaac Watts to a tune that had been attributed to none other than George Friedrich Handel. And then eventually it got paired with another tune called Antioch in 1719. And that's an old tune as well. And there's all sorts of things you can look up about the history of that tune and how it goes. And there are echoes of Handel in it. The first, just for example, and this may be random, but those of you who are musical will appreciate this. The first four notes of Joy to the World, Joy to the World, are the same as the first four in the chorus, Lift up your heads, dun, 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 right? From Messiah. There's also a lift from another Messiah piece, the Comfort Ye aria. But there's no historical evidence that these things really mattered. I mean, they matter, but not that they were intentional, right? As of December 2009, Joy to the World had become the most published Christian hymn in North America. How about that? But here's the deal. It was not written as a Christmas carol. That was not the intent of anyone when it was not the intent of Isaac Watts when he wrote the text. It was not the intent of Lowell Mason when he paired it with the song. It was a more standard thing because it actually draws not from a Christmas text in the Bible, but from Psalm 98 and from Genesis 3. Psalm 98. So what I'd like you to do first is let's turn in your Bibles to Psalm 98. And you're going to see the connection here immediately. Oh, sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm have gotten him victory. The Lord has made known his victory. He has revealed his vindication in the sight of the nations. He has remembered his steadfast love and faithfulness to the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the victory of our God. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Break forth into joyous song and sing praises. Sing praises to the Lord with the lyre and the sound of melody, with trumpets and the sound of the horn. Make a joyful noise before the King, the Lord. Let the sea roar and all that fills it, the world and those who live in it. Let the floods clap their hands. Let the hills sing together for joy at the presence of the Lord. For he is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world with righteousness and the peoples with equity. He rules the world with truth and grace and makes the nations prove. It's eschatological. Joy to the World is a hymn about the coming judgment of God, but we've made it into a Christmas carol. And if you pay attention carefully to the text, you'll see there's really nothing Christmas about it. Although to us, it feels that way. We've adapted it into that. The third verse does not draw from Psalm 98. Instead, it draws from Genesis 3 with the account of the fall of humanity. Far as the curse is found, what curse is that? It's the curse on Adam and Eve. And so within this eschatological hymn that we're to have joy to the world because God reigns, it's tied back in, and what's funny about this to me is Isaac Watts really has the mind of Handel in this, because if you study Handel's Messiah manuscript, it is a theological statement that pulls from different places in the Bible and rearranges these things in text that is set to music, right? Not by Handel, but by someone else, whose name I know and I've now forgotten, who really did not like what Handel did with music at all, by the way. It was not what he had in mind. In years past, I taught a whole series of lessons on Handel's Messiah. And I can't remember the guy's name who compiled all of this. But he basically stitched together these scriptures in an effort to make a theological statement. And that's what Isaac Watts has done with Joy of the World. He's taken Psalm 98 and Genesis 3 and jammed them together to make a statement about the reconciliation of all things at the end of time. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive its king. And the origin of this is not in a manger in Bethlehem. The origin is at the end of time, when all things are set right. Now, does that make it not a good Christmas carol? No. It's still very fine, but it does point us toward something beyond the present moment. And this is really, as we are on this first Sunday of Advent, in the Christian tradition, Advent means the coming, to come, the anticipation of the coming. And it really has a double ring to it. It is the anticipation of the birth of the Messiah, and it's also the anticipation of Christ's second coming. So we look at Advent but in these two things. Some of you who've been around here a long time may remember that many years ago, I wrote an extension to one of our favorite hymns. That only has 2 verses, and we needed 4 to get the choir in at the time. And that's why I called it Hymn Helper. Come thou long expected Jesus. And one of the lines I wrote was, in this time between your advents, da, 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 da. And we're sitting in the in-between time of the advent of the birth of the Messiah and the advent of the full reign of Christ in the millennium. So that's the eschatological part of this. So here's your surprise bit of history for Joy to the World. I hope it doesn't ruin it for you. Maybe it makes it richer as you think about that. Thoughts? We could talk the whole lesson about Joy to the World, but that's not enough. Questions, comments on this before we move on? Joy to the World? Yeah, Jim?
Maybe, I don't think other people would have the same question too. When I hear Joy to the World, I immediately think of Luke 2 and how,
We're going to get there.
well, I mean, you say it's not dealing with...
It's not a direct quote. It's not a direct quote. Yeah, hang on. We're going to get there. I promise. I mean, peace on earth is a direct pull from the words of the angels, right? We'll get to this in just a moment. Great. It's a fair question. Very fair question. Yes. So before we move on, some of you may be thinking quietly to yourself, what is the difference between peace on earth and joy to the world? And this is the thing I want us to sort of lay out first before we get into a discussion of joy to the world, because peace and joy are not the same thing. And I'm wondering, Linda, what's the difference to you between them? What's the difference between peace and joy?
And goodwill.
Okay, we're not talking about goodwill. We're talking about peace and joy right now. Save that. We're going to get to goodwill.
Peace is, I'm accepted by God. I'm not in conflict with God. And joy is when I realize what that means.
Okay. That's certainly a very good way to say that. Someone else, how would you define the difference between peace and joy? Yeah, Ann?
Well, you may have peace in Gaza for a while, but it's not necessarily joyful.
It's peaceful because no one's bombing you at that moment, right? That can lead you to be joyful in the moment, right?
Peace to me is calm and no anxiety. It's just a safe
Right. You can have joy without having peace.
Yes.
Can you have peace without having joy? I think so.
Yeah, there's a lot of sad Christians who don't get it.
So to me, peace is more a state of mind, is a state of being, and joy is much more transient. Yes. Joy comes and goes, and we can be joyous about things that are not peaceful. And certainly, on the wicked side of things, we can, some of you missed my introduction today. We just saw the movie. On the wicked side of things, you can absolutely be joyful about things that do not bring peace. If you want conflict. One of the lines in Wicked that I think is from the novel, that makes it into the stage play and makes it into the movie, and I'm not giving away any secrets here. I mean, my God, if you don't know this story by now, I'm sorry. Where the wizard, who is working to take away speaking ability from the animals, says to Elphaba that when he arrived in Oz, there was dissension and there was disagreement. And he realized from the place he came from, here, that sometimes you have to create a common enemy to focus the attention on creating unity. Well, yeah, we've seen that over and over again, right? You have to scapegoat someone, which is what was literally happening in this story. And you can be, like he was, euphoric about that, but what you're doing that's bringing you joy is not bringing peace on earth. And I would say it's not joy to the world, it's joy to me. Right? Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea, joy to you and me. Yeah, it's all Jeremiah's fault.
But he was a good friend of mine.
You need better friends, probably, right? So I hope you can begin to see the distinction here that when we talk about peace on earth and we talk about joy to the world, there is some overlap on the Venn diagram here, but they're really separate ideas. And so I would remind you that in the Christian year, in churches like ours, we celebrate 4 Sundays of Advent that each week has a theme. Peace, love, hope. No, peace, hope, love, and joy. That's the right order. Love is the 3rd week, right? Joy is the last one, I think. I always have to look it up. But these 4 big ideas from about the 15th century have been codified as a way for the church to think about each of the Sundays leading up to Christmas in a different way. And Advent really was created as a counterweight to Lent. So you have the 40 days leading up to Easter, and then you have not quite 40 days leading up to Christmas, right? That's a different lesson. All right, let's look at some other scripture on this, because we're going to make Jim happy today. We're going to get there. Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2. Let me get there. Matthew chapter 2. And I think we're going to... here we go. Let's start in verse 7. Then Herod, this is the Magi. Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there, ahead of them, went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. That's the first appearance of this word in the New Testament narrative about the birth of Christ. And of course, you know the rest of that story. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, knelt down, paid him homage, and opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left by another road. But their response to seeing the Christ child was joy. Now, let's go to Luke chapter 2. Told you we'd get there. Yep. Beginning in verse 8. In that region, again, think of your best Linus voice here. In that region, there were shepherds living in their fields, keeping watch over their flocks by night. Then an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were sore afraid. Yeah. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is the Messiah, Christ the Lord." And you know how that story goes on. That's the reference to joy in Luke. So yes, the word appears, but the context in which we think of it is an interpretation of this that really brings together both the double ring of Advent. Does that make sense? Are you with me so far?
You say the double ring?
So by the double ring, I mean the Christ is coming again. Yeah. Christ has come, Christ is risen, Christ is coming, Christ has come, Christ is coming again. That idea. You got to get both of these together, right?
If I'm getting off subject, just
Well, it's fine because, you know.
but it just occurred to me, and I never thought about it. So you got the Magi, who are, from the east,
Yes.
so not Jews.
They're from Longview.
They're from Barrel City.
Yeah.
And so, why are they so joyful? It's not
Because they've been smoking that myrrh on the way.
But I mean, is there? I mean, is that hinting at the Greeks will Gentiles will eventually? I mean, I don't know. Like, why on earth would? Because the joy, right, is not because of just a baby, but it's the King of.
Yeah.
Israel.
Well, now you're getting into my current existential crisis.
Yes.
I told Allison yesterday, I'm really sort of down on sentimentalism overall, but yet I also want to watch a Hallmark Christmas movie. I am really conflicted, and those things are nothing but sentimentalism. But somehow I think I can handle that. But other sappy sentimentalism, I'm like too jaded for right now because I've been too depressed. I'm too anxious, I'm sorry, this is my confession time. Someone that I know who's young got engaged this holiday weekend and posted on Facebook. And some sweet soul said in response in a comment, "Oh, the engagement period is such a sweet time." And I thought, God, that's sappy. That's like right out of a Hallmark movie. No, that's like out of a rom-com. And I mean, it's true, right? But I was not feeling sentimental at the time, even though I wanted to turn on the TV and watch a Hallmark Christmas movie. And so
You got a burr on yourself.
I do. And sometimes that's depression. And sometimes it's reality. And sometimes it's anxiety. And sometimes it's just being an old fart. Right? And so this goes to your question of what brought the Magi joy. They had not met Marie Kondo yet. So how could they know what brought them joy? They found out another way. They were on a mission. They were on a quest. What we know of the Magi is that what brought them joy was exploring. and finding and responding.
Right, because they're astrologers.
They're astrologers. And so they're on a mission. And the interesting thing, this would make a whole interesting sermon, Jim. I've never thought of this before. The Magi were not really followers of Jesus.
Right. So that's why I was wondering if it was like foreshadowing,
Well, yeah, I think in the Gospels it's definitely foreshadowing. Yeah, because gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and you get that whole thing, myrrh being... Go sing the hymn. Yeah, we three kings of Orient are. Gold I bring to crown him king. That one.
We used to sing that smoking on our giant cigars.
Right. Yes, Ann.
Maybe they, looking at an infant who's the king of the Jews, are literally trying to establish diplomatic relations very early.
Okay, I'll give you a pass on that one. Keep going. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So again, the challenge we have today is it's so easy to read our view of Christianity back into a story that doesn't know our view of Christianity, right? It is, it's the way we've been raised, right? I mean, this is just the way the church culture and American culture in particular has been. And I think this is another reason I'm sort of death on sentimentalism right now in the holidays, because sentimentalism sometimes leads you to believe things that just aren't true, right? Now, yes, the Magi came to worship. And by the way, they did not come right after the birth. This happened later. That's why you keep the wise men at a separate place in your nativity scene. They do not need to be with baby Jesus yet. In fact, baby Jesus doesn't even need to show up there yet.
They started coming when he was born,
They started, but it's a long journey.
and they had to walk.
So you need to have them in the next room on their way. Yeah. Carol Ann?
I always thought he was about 2 years old.
Yes.
Okay.
It took them a long time.
Well, they said Herod had to, he had
Right.
all the children 2 years and under.
Right. So somewhere in that range. That's how we get that, right? But back to the original question. What was the joy that motivated the wise men, the Magi, to make this long journey? And I think there is a lesson in that for us, in that for many people, not all people, there is joy in the journey.
Oh, nice.
Thank you. I thought that was well played myself. Just going to pat myself on the back right there.
Well, they saw the star and they knew what it meant, but they didn't know until they found him.
Right, because they were on a quest.
And so that joy was intense because yes, we were right, he's really here.
So the funny thing is, there is nothing else in the Bible after that moment to tell us whatever happened to the Magi. We don't know if they went home believing. We don't know if they were missionaries. We don't know if they fell off a cliff on the way. We don't know. We just don't know what happened to
It
them.
might just be a vehicle for the Herod story,
Well, yeah, because they're setting that up, right? So they play a role in that part of the story. And I think one of the things that strikes me about joy is nobody can really live a life that's always joyful. Because if you do, it's fake. Life is not always joyful. But there are and should be moments of joy in life that we strive for, that we find, that we share. Okay, we'll get to more on that in a moment.
Doing all these services and for all these people who passed, and so often you go to these funerals and they say, she had such joy, she was always happy, she was always laughing.
And that's a lie.
Always. And you're going, I don't know if I'd want to be around that person.
I agree with you, Jim. It's just too much. It's like ODing on Hallmark Christmas movies.
Where I feel I'm sick.
Right. You can't be joyful all the time. Now, moving on in our New Testament study here, Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. Swords, Bible drill. You ready?
Yeah.
By contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, competing against one another, envying one another. So here we see a framing later in the early church of joy as one of the fruits of the Spirit. It's a cardinal virtue for Christians that indicates that you know Christ. But it's also paired with this idea of not being conceited and not competing with one another for position. Joy is about something other than winning over other people. Joy is about something different than victory. And we see that here, I think, as an example of this. All right.
Why do they say against these there is no law? Why that's
Oh, it's just a phrase, I think. You know, it's just a way of saying
nothing wrong.
there's nothing wrong with these.
It's okay to do.
It not only is it okay, it's recommended, right? Yeah, I think that's it. It's just sort of that phrasing. So I thought it would be interesting. I'm sort of in love with this new AI feature. When you do a Google search for something, now Google gives you an AI overview of that thing. And sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. So I did a Google search for stories of Advent joy because I was looking for some perfect illustration to use with you today to make a point and tell you a beautiful story, to make you cry and, you know, all that. I didn't find that, but here is how Google AI summarizes this question, which I think is really fascinating. It is theorizing about what could be a story of Advent joy based upon all the data that's available on the internet that it scours. A story of Advent joy could be about a family who, despite facing challenges, finds deep meaning in the season by focusing on acts of kindness, sharing their story with others, and actively reflecting on the true meaning of Jesus' birth, ultimately experiencing a profound sense of joy that transcends their difficulties. That's a pretty good summary. We're going to give a 1 mark to AI on that, right? It goes on. This could include a single mother preparing a special meal for a lonely neighbor, a child sharing their favorite toys with a less fortunate child, or a family volunteering at a local shelter, all while discussing the biblical story of the angel's announcement to the shepherds and the message of hope and joy it brings. Pretty good summary, I think. When I think back on my own life and where I have found Christmas joy, Advent joy, it is this very thing, and it may be for you too. During the 17 years I was the associate pastor here, hands down, the favorite thing I got to do was to sometimes be Santa to people who other people wanted to help but didn't want them to know who was helping them. I got to be the intermediary multiple times when someone would come to me and say, I know so-and-so needs help with this. Here's $500. Would you make sure they get it to buy Christmas presents for their kids? Here's someone, these are true stories. Here's someone who's experienced a catastrophic death in the family. I'd like to help pay that person's mortgage for the next year. Would you help me do that? These are big things, right? And the thing I love about those stories is when I got to be the intermediary, it was because no one wanted credit for it. And I think there's tremendous joy when you don't get credit. When I was a junior in college in Albuquerque, Allison and I were in a singles group. We were dating at the time. We were in a singles group at Sandia Baptist Church there. And there was a family in the church that was very involved, and the older daughter in that family had a child out of wedlock that she was raising on her own, and it was difficult. It was always difficult. The family she came from was not wealthy. They were very much a working class family, helping as they could. And I was working at the Baptist State Convention as the assistant editor of the weekly newspaper there, and I got a $50 Christmas bonus. Now, this was like 1983. So, $50 was more then than it is today. And one of the most joyous things I've ever done at Christmas was I went to the bank, I converted it to a cashier's check so it could not be traceable. And I put it in an envelope and mailed it to that woman so she could have something extra for Christmas for her kid. Didn't want anyone to know I'd ever done it. And I dare say, even giving presents to my own kids at Christmas has seldom rivaled the joy of that. It's a one-time event, long-time joy. I don't even know what's happened to this family now. I've lost track of them, but it doesn't matter, right? Because when we're meeting needs in the moment. And I think one of the downsides to people who want to be charitable about things is, well, I need to know that my investment's going to pay off. And that's not joy, that's control. There is a difference. And if you want to know peace and joy, you got to give up control. Who else has a story you'd like to share about Christmas joy or Advent joy? Yeah.
My freshman year in college, I was terribly homesick. I was homesick for my family, my little brothers, my little sister, and it was a hard first semester. I had some friends in the dorm, and that was the best thing of that year, of that semester. And at Christmas time, we went and got a little bitty tree and put it up, and we were making decorations to put on it, just sitting around together. One of my friends' boyfriend was in Vietnam. She was terrified for him. One of my friends' grandmother had just died, with whom she was very close. There was a lot of issues going on in that room. But when we were sitting there making those ornaments for this little tree and being together and thinking about Christmas, it's occurred to me in a wave that because of Christmas, in spite of everything was going to be okay.
Beautiful.
And that sustained me through many years.
Beautiful. Who else has a story or a comment? Joy. How have you found joy at Christmas time? Anyone?
Maybe more of us need to find joy at Christmas.
Well, my hunch is you probably have and you just don't realize it. It is a season that has become, to quote Charlie Brown, so commercialized and so busy, right, that it's easy to forget the things that matter most. And I know I find myself, even when all those good things are happening, I really can't let myself enjoy it. And maybe that's, again, my personality defects. Probably so, right? Because sometimes it's too much, right? Sometimes it's too much.
Well, it seems like, I know I love things that you weren't expecting that came out of nowhere? Someone was thinking of you.
Right.
I know my mom passed away a week before Christmas, and came time to get out Santa Claus things out of the closet, and they said, "Oh, this must be for Joel. It looks like his." And I said, "No, that's the one. I love that sweater at EM Kansas. I love that thing. I saw it about 2 months ago. I had no idea." And she had picked it up while I wasn't looking and saved it for me. So that to me was my favorite Christmas gift, because Mom had seen it and hidden it for me, and I had no idea.
That's beautiful. It reminds me, I did a funeral years ago for someone, I think it was here. I can't, maybe some of you will remember this, because I think you haven't talked about it in the funeral. It was someone who knew they were dying. It was a woman. And I don't remember the month, but it was probably the fall. And the woman who died had bought and wrapped Christmas presents for every one of her family and set them aside to be found after her death. You talk about some tears, right? It's just like that, right? It is these things that pop up and remind us. And, it is easy and probably good to be sentimental this time of year, despite Grinches like me.
I was telling Rob this earlier, and this is something that happened to me, but I just want to share it, and it was almost Advent. But a professor at Perkins and the assistant dean of students, who both had their own families, right? It's not like they don't have anything better to do. On Thanksgiving, just opened the professor's house up, and then of course the assistant dean does a bunch of work and stuff. She's got teenage kids and all this. 2 wayward orphans like myself, who could enjoy Thanksgiving with this really eclectic group. We had a couple African students are there, and another professor came with her, strange family, and all that. But it was just this wonderful eclectic bunch of people gathered in a diverse unity.
Yeah.
Kind of. And it was just really, and I just was so overwhelmed by.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. And I love that because I was raised to be hospitable.
That's why I said it was the epitome of Christian hospitality, because they're giving up their own time.
Right, and you don't have to.
Yeah.
I told our son Luke and his wife Tori that I was so proud of them this week because they just a few months ago moved into the house they've been building for a year outside Mystic, Connecticut. And, Luke's in the Coast Guard band. And there are a lot of his colleagues in the Coast Guard who don't have family nearby, can't go anywhere, couldn't get leave for Thanksgiving. And they ended up with 15 people at their house for Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, that's great.
Just like this. And I said to Luke, your grandma Charlotte would be so proud of you. That's my mother who could throw a party for 50 people on an hour's notice. I'm not kidding you.
Just a Jello mold.
I mean, she had it in the freezer. She had it in when we cleared out her house in Albuquerque, she had 15 chip and dip sets. 15. Yeah. All of which had been used. None of them were in boxes. Yeah. But that's a joy as well. Any other examples you can think of? Yeah, Jerry?
My favorite Christmas story is that I grew up at River Oaks Baptist in Houston, which is a fairly affluent community. And there was a daycare over in a low economic part of Houston. And Mother would invite the children in this daycare to come over. And she would get the high school kids to bring gifts, not for the children, but for their mothers. And they were all displayed beautifully in our community hall. And they got to go shop for their mothers. So they would be able to give something.
That's a beautiful idea.
Being at River Oaks, they were really nice gifts.
Right.
That the kids brought, and then the high school kids brought, and then they
That's a beautiful idea. And it's empowering too, right? Yeah, that's beautiful because it's empowering. Jerry, one of my Christmas joys was the Christmas Eve I drove you home
Oh, yes.
from the Christmas Eve service here
Oh, yeah.
when it was sleeting and snowing so hard. I really did not think we would get to your house on Church Road safely. It's a wonderful life kind of night. Yeah, I just thought of that as you were talking. Yeah. Anyone else with a story about joy? Jim, and then we'll get back.
Had the opportunity to take a group of people to Israel on Christmas.
Oh, to a group to Israel on Christmas.
Yeah, in the Christmas season.
Wow.
And, you know, I just see these places where they say, you know, Christ was buried
Yeah.
and where he was given a tomb.
Yeah.
And there's more than one of those places
Right.
in Jerusalem. And I got to thinking and looking at those things, and they seem so artificial.
Mm.
And maybe they were the real,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't think they were.
Right.
But I can remember the joy of knowing that little baby grew to maybe his 33rd year, and there he gave his life for me. And, you know, it was a baby, but it was a whole life. I wish we knew more,
Right.
but it was a kind of joyful experience of all things to look at what somebody thought might be the tomb in which he was buried. Maybe Gardens Calvary, or maybe, you know, maybe the church of the, it fails me
Sepulchre.
now, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, joy comes even, not just in a baby, but in all that baby accomplished,
Right.
all that baby did, which you see and reminded of when you see these places.
So you remind me of a line I often use at funerals. Nobody wants to be remembered for how they died. Everybody wants to be remembered for how they lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, for the ones of us who sing a new song, we go to Parkland and we stand there in the lobby and we sing, and all these people walk by, old and babies, and that's, to me, that makes me feel more in the Christmas spirit than almost anything I do. And we'll go again in 2 weeks, and all of us on the bus with walkers and
Right.
get in there, and it's fun, and dressed in silly hats, and
Yeah.
you know, just singing there. And they said that they very rarely have anybody come to Parkland anymore to sing. We're
That's
one of the only
surprising.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really one of the only groups.
That is shocking. Thank you for these beautiful stories. I think, speaking for myself, and maybe you connect to this as well, it's good to be reminded sometimes about these little things in life. Because in my life, at least, the older I get, the more the little things matter than the big things. It's that accumulation of little things that really keeps us going. Because we may have a big thing that brings us joy, but it's those simple acts of kindness. And again, I'm back to Google AI here, which I think is fascinating. Of all the things that Google scans on the internet, and they find the most common themes, key elements of an Advent joy story, Google says: unexpected acts of kindness, community connection, personal reflection. And here it explains individuals looking back on their lives and realizing how God's presence has brought them joy even during difficult times, finding new meaning in the Advent season. Sharing the message. there are ideas that Google gives us about a lost Christmas carol. And that brings me back to Joy to the World. Because one of the things we know about people who suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia and other debilitating illnesses, and many of you have experienced this yourself, music is one of the very last things to go, if it ever goes at all. And you can go into a hospital, you can go into a memory care unit, you can go to a nursing home, you can go anywhere and start singing Joy to the World, and someone is going to sing along with you. And sometimes maybe the joy is just in the singing.
My friend's mother had Alzheimer's. She didn't know who Jesus was. She didn't recognize her daughter. Thought her husband was still alive, but she could sing all 4 verses of a hymn.
Oh, my.
Yeah,
It's in there somewhere.
it is. We hear this story over and over and over again, the power of music. And so there's a reason Joy to the World, I think, is the most published Christmas hymn that really isn't a Christmas hymn. But it does offer us hope of joy now and yet to come. Let's close with a word of prayer, and Melanie will come with our prayer concerns. God, grant us your peace today and help us to know your joy. We pray, Lord, that you would use us as instruments of your peace and joy for those around us today and in this season ahead. Through Jesus Christ. Amen.